Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we are going to interview Rune Sovndahl, co-founder and CEO of Fantastic Services, which is an online platform where clients can book professional domestic service providers such as plumbers, gardeners, and cleaners. Thanks for joining us, Rune.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a real honor.
So we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get 3 passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass, but try to keep your answers to one word or one sentence only, okay?
Okay.
All right, so how long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
30 minutes.
Okay, most embarrassing moment of your life?
That's a hard one. Something to do with diving.
Okay, how many hours of sleep can you survive on?
At 3 hours at the moment with a 3-year-old.
Okay, fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
Keeping your customers.
Okay, the city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Ooh. I have to be careful on answering that. Let's say Moscow.
Oh, okay. Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Okay, the first movie that comes to your mind when I say the word ambition.
The founder.
Okay, when did you last cry and why?
I last cried last week when my son managed to swim towards me.
Okay, the biggest mistake of your career.
Saying no to a job about 15 years ago.
Oh, okay. How do you relax?
The real relaxation for me is going diving. There's no internet there.
Okay. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
About 6.
Oh, okay. A habit of yours that you really hate.
And probably the coffee.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
To keep going.
And your favorite Netflix show.
The TV show, it's probably Peaky Blinders.
Okay, Peaky Blinders. Okay, well, that's the end of the rapid fire round. You scored 10 and 10. Now it's time to go on to the bigger questions. And the first one is, how did the idea of launching Fantastic Services first come up? Can you briefly explain how you help your clients?
Very, very briefly, Fantastic Services was funded about a basic principle I had. I came from the travel industry 12, 15 years ago and did some of the first dynamic packaging, which was putting a hotel together with a flight without any people involved. I had a problem on a carpet and spilled some red wine that needed to be cleaned, and I went online and tried to get it cleaned. And I made 3 phone calls. One turned up and then quoted me something completely different than what I expected. And I just said to myself, this has got to be done in a smarter way. And that's where the idea was born about being able to book and have real-time availability of a service online.
Interesting. And speaking of which, so how exactly does one get like a, a wine stain off a carpet? Is it like salt or what does one use?
No, there's the professionals are with it. There's a couple of special chemicals and so forth, and then it depends on the type of car. I mean, we can talk 2 hours of carpet cleaning, but generally, it's hire a professional is my advice. Get someone who knows what they're doing. Whether they use cold water extraction, hot water extraction, or steam extraction. There's so many ways of really cleaning a carpet. So, talk to someone professional on that one. Unfortunately, I know a few things, but yeah.
Okay. So how has COVID impacted your business and the domestic service industry in general?
Well, in the beginning of it, it was really hard because when the first lockdown came, people canceled their domestic cleaners. There was a lot of misunderstandings on whether are you allowed to do a removals work, are you allowed to continue with having a plumber or an electrician or a cleaner or a handyman in your home. So a lot of people misunderstood what was communicated about that it was allowed if you took safe distances and 2-meter rules and a few other things. So in the very early days, it meant a lot of cancellations of domestic cleaning. Later on, people got more used to it and understood the government changed some guidelines, and the business is coming back. The thing that was most strange was that the number of removals increased enormously, and gardening just absolutely exploded. We had actually a record year in gardening.
Okay, that's interesting. And how about like corporate office spaces? Are your people also working there? And was there any change because no one was going to work anymore, and these
Well,
corporate spaces were not being used?
well, that the first part was that people ordered more, and then suddenly it stopped because people realized they were working from home, and that business part of it has not recovered yet. Even with people going back, because people are using the offices. What we saw was more regular small cleans rather than big deep cleans, which is the right
Hmm.
way to do it.
And going back to the gardening, what actually led to the explosion of gardening? Like, how can you explain it?
I mean, it was very clear. We saw that people were using the outdoor space more. We got a number of requests for, can you help us move one office and put it in storage? So our storage business did quite well. Move one room and put it in storage, and help me build an office in there, painting and decorating. And then we saw people couldn't go on holiday, so of course they're going to be using their garden space more. We also saw a number of moves from the small 1 or 2 bedroom flats in central London into zone 5, 6, and even outside the M25, that people moved faster than I thought, because I didn't think that people were going to act the first month, but it actually happened
Mm.
already in 30 days after the first lockdown. People saying like, well, this might last very long, and people really quickly decided to move into something bigger and further out from central London.
So do you think you had to pivot really fast to make staff available for like something else that people were interested in?
I mean, we're a franchise business, so Fantastic
Yeah.
Services have a benefit of that, because we have a centralized training unit. So we had to reskill some people from one sector to the other in order to keep up with demand on others. So we came through it at the end of the day. 12 months later, we came out at it in a better state than we expected, and we actually almost reached exactly the same goal as last year. So that was incredible, and that was due to the fact we were a franchise where we could help reskill everybody.
Hmm. So you've also been the MD and CEO of an international marketing online agency. How do you bring that expertise into what you do now?
Well, I think when you're a startup founder,
Hmm.
you it's extremely useful, especially the way we are. We're bootstrapped, which is kind of a rare
Hmm.
place to be when we're talking about 8 digits turnover or more. Then you're looking at that. Then having a one specific skill allows you to build your business on maybe what is called a secret that that a lot of people don't know. And one of those secrets was the understanding of how online marketing worked already on. So coming in with that meant I had one foot where I didn't have to hire the same people. I already knew what we were going to do on the marketing side of things. So that was very useful.
And how does the fact that you're bootstrapped help you, particularly like as a firm, as compared to your competitors who are not bootstrapped? How's this helping you? Like, what do you think are the chains that you're not tied by?
Well, I mean, this is an incredibly interesting question. It's a long going one. One is that one of the benefits is that you don't have capital. One of the disadvantages is you don't have capital. But the benefit by not having capital is that you have to be creative and you have
Mm.
to make it work. And I think I think it's Tony Robbins, a couple of others, of coaches and business masters always say the same thing. How do you take over an island? You burn the boat, so you have to win it. I think that when you're a bootstrap, you have to win it. We didn't have an option
Mm.
of not making profit one year, so we had to, and that made us more hungry for it. Stay
Mm.
foolish, stay hungry. So it made us more hungry. The second thing was we didn't have to go down one route that private equity had dictated. We spoke to private equity along the route, and they kept saying, "No, no, go down that route. That route." If I had gone down that route, um, then the pandemic would have destroyed us. We wouldn't have had a company, and that's what's happened to some of the very well funded companies in our industry. They went down the route of one service
Mm,
only and are gone now, or very close to being gone. So that was a benefit. We had freedom to
mm-hmm.
move.
For sure. And it gave you guys a kind of a survival instinct. And when the shit really hit the fan, which is during the pandemic, you were able to easily be flexible and survive. That's interesting. And what do you think is the future? Because all one hears about now is, bootstrap startups are not so popular as like all one hears about is VC funding here, there, everywhere. So what do you
Well,
think is the future?
Well, I'll give you a little insight on that. Is the reason why most of the press that talks about venture funded
Mm.
are backed by venture funded capitals, which is a very good way of returning your money, right? So,
Yeah.
like, let's look at who's talking about what. When you look at the overall thing, then it's very clear to understand why the press um, sort of really focuses so much on venture-backed companies or private equity-backed companies, and why that's celebrated so much, because there's somebody benefiting from it. Now, that's neither a good or a bad thing in per se, but let's look at the four options you have. Right, you can have a job, which you can get a reasonable good career and hopefully get equity and shares in. You can do a startup, which is very, very hard. And if you think about the number of startups that fails
Mm.
versus the number of startups that's just in your mind, right? The wannabe startups that never get past
Mm.
idea stage. There's
Mm.
probably a billion more of those than there is of startups. Then there is the opportunity of buying a business, and then there's a franchise,
Mm.
which is one of the things I'm looking at now and getting interested. If you're talking about what the future is, I think that the generation that comes out, I mean, one of the things that people they want to be in business for themselves, not necessarily buying themselves, but the startup is not really by yourself and is not always for yourself. And I know a competitor of ours who is very prolific and talking a lot about this, about how actually raising the money and raising too much too fast was detrimental to the success of the company, which is one of the reasons why that company is nearly nothing now compared to the amount of money put into it. So as I said, it really depends on where you are. But I think the younger generation, they want to believe in something. They want to be part of something that's like what we're going in now with becoming more sustainable. We're really trying to shift that focus now away from just delivering the service into making really sustainable services. I think that the sense of belonging and sense of purpose is important. I'm not sure that the startup world is going to be the the way forward. If you actually look at how much money is available right now from private
Mm.
equity, uh, it's growing by the day, even though we are seeing record numbers, but also the numbers not allocated yet are there. Does that mean nobody has ideas for starting up? No. It means people might want to try a little bit more themselves before they go out.
Mm.
And it can be that people don't think that the billion-dollar unicorn might not be the end goal of the world for them personally. They might see that their careers or their life should have a different route. So I think the future is we're going to see more. I think we're going to see a more sporadic marketplace with a number of what I say micro business models, and one of them is franchising. But there can be so many shades of franchising; it's crazy, and it's also so magic because you can own something, you can do X, Y, Z. I mean, if you think about Amazon and how FBA and doing your brand is kind of a micro franchising in some ways, they're also going into franchising. So there's going to be
Mm.
a number of things, and this is where we hope for, and one of our aims with Fantastic Services is this entrepreneur platform. Like really, no matter what walk of life or where you come
Mm.
from, you have a chance of being in business for yourself, not by yourself. So I
Fair.
think
And what is an example of a bootstrap business that has inspired you or that you aspire to be like? Can you give us some examples? Because all one hears about is like VC funded firms. So tell us about
yeah,
some.
I mean, there's 37 Signals and Basecamp and a couple of
Mm.
others that's bootstrapped. I think one of the things is that they tend to be a little bit more quiet about it, also
Mm.
because they don't reach the billion-dollar valuation. Uh, but there's a number of companies that are bootstrapped, but no one really rings into mind of something like they are massively, because at one stage, and I think that's where all things all is, we're at a growth phase now, which means that taking capital would be the best thing because we're a scale up. But there's a number of good companies that started out being there, and I think Basecamp is the ones who's been most heard about. And 37 Signals now, they're not SAP now, they're not XYZ now, but there's a number of really good companies out there that are at that level. It becomes harder to compete, and at one stage you do need to do it because you are going to have to be competitive and scale fast, because it is really the big fish eats the smaller fish.
Okay. So we tried to dig deep and we found that you're also a cave diver, speaking of fish, and a trained chef. So one good experience that you would like to share with us, which is related to any of these hobbies.
Well, I'll take cave diving, because cave diving was a passion I found during the time of startup. Being a startup founder means that you're working, God knows how many hours. I don't even count. We used to call it from 5 to 9, more than 9 to 5. It's the other way around. So I had the chance of, after a year and a half, I had the chance of first going on holiday, and then I went to Mexico, and actually it ended up being a business of mine. I actually ended up investing in the dive shop, but that's another story. I went to learn something that was so out of the business, and it's the same with the chef. I really like to learn something that has no connection with what you do to a daily thing in the business. And just learning that means you get this beginner's mind, and then suddenly, while you're in that process, you get to a level of learning that lets you see things from another angle, like completely learning. I mean, I try to study exactly what we were talking about earlier about wine spills. So cave diving was that for me. Plus, there's a beautiful thing is there's no internet down there, which is very nice. So you get an hour and a half if you're diving with proper technical diving. A couple of times you get an hour and a half, 2 hours where there is no internet and nobody's going to ring you. Your watch won't even beep except for if you're going up too fast. So there's no connection to anything else, and that's a beautiful space, I think.
And then you come back to land and you have a billion emails to check. Okay.
Well, at least you have those. At least you have the 2 hours of freedom.
Fair. So you've been writing a book, managing a company with more than 2,000 technicians, and mentoring. So what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, I mean, the book's going to be published later this year. Probably one of two that's going to come up. But a typical day for me, at the moment, is in front of Zoom. But it generally is getting up. I don't really read emails till 9 o'clock. I try to have breakfast and coffee before I even touch it, because otherwise it's I won't get out of bed because I'll just start replying. So I really try to have my breakfast first. Spend some time with my son. Then it goes into a couple of emails. Then normally around 9:30, 10, the Zoom call starts, and we try to minimize them now. Instead of an hour, it's 20 minutes calls. Then there's space. I put a lot of buffers, 10-15% on my Calendly account, so that I can get a little bit of space between them, so I can jump from meeting to meeting. But that's what it looks like now. We've got an office, and it's partially opened, so we're in and out of the office. So sometimes there's a physical meeting, but the normal day seems to jump between Zoom to Microsoft to Zoom. But I try to make the spaces in between them. And then it ends with the normal thing, dinner and putting my son to sleep, and then around 10ish, 11, I can either put on an audiobook or read, depending on how tired I am.
And so how would you, and a work-life balance, how do you manage that? Like what time do your working hours end, or are they like going on till 10?
Well, they don't go until 10. I mean, I try to. I finish at 5, and then I have a 4-hour break with the family, and then they start when it's bedtime, when my son is in bed and so forth. Then I have a 1 or 2 hours more maximum, and then by midnight it's over. So I don't have it. It's not as crazy anymore. And then weekends, I allow myself maximum 2 hours of work now. So that's got to be, if it's a call, sometimes there's things where those 20-minute call don't do. So you've got to clarify something, then you have that call. This used to, in the past, was a walking meeting. You'd go for a walk with someone, and when it's big clarification, but it's not needed every single weekend. So that's good. It's a much better life balance than when I was a startup. We've been around for 12 years now, so it's easier.
Fair. And how has becoming a franchise, like how's it affected you, and like how has the sector itself changed over the years, and has it meant like more workload for you or less workload for you?
Well, it's if in the beginning when you set up something new, it was like starting over again. We had to create the training of what we knew were the truth about XYZ working, whether that functions. So that was a lot of things to put that training into place. Once that was done, it was easier to outsource, and then you realize there's a couple benefits from franchising that normal companies. We've actually got an operations manual which can be replicated all over. So once you start down the franchise route, you become instantly more scalable.
Mm,
We can open a franchise now anywhere. It can be in Novosibirsk, Russia. It can be in Calgary. It can be in Sao Paulo, and the
mm,
same book works, the same operation, the same how it works. There's a couple of translation things and a couple of price adaptations, but really you become a lot more scalable. And it's a journey that takes time to set up, but once it's set up, it's like, wow, I've got a blueprint for running a business in Mexico now that will do seven figures within 1 to 2 years.
mm.
So that gives you a huge
Hello.
for that part, but then
Okay.
suddenly, bam, I can open it
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Fair. Uh, I think a little bit got cut there, but anyway, let's go to the next question, which is Fantastic Services has been featured in CNN, Forbes, BBC, and other such publications. What is the vision that led you to achieve this for your company?
Well, one of the things is that and I put my name on the company as well, and so did Anton Skalatov, my
Hmm.
business partner. We put our names on there and our pictures on there. One of the things is that we did want to make fantastic services be fantastic services. So we put our names there, which made it a lot harder for us for a couple of years to deliver the quality, and people were writing to us directly. Now that we're
Mm,
satisfied with it, it's a lot easier. But it was about trust, really. It's people buy from people, and
mm,
it's the same with the franchises. You will get some time when you're buying the franchise. You will get some time with both me and Anton, and we will go through some of your business plan, and we will go through what you're looking at, and we will come in and give us our ideas. I mean, we're entrepreneurs in that aspect of it, so you will really get part of that as well. So putting that on there and then going out there and doing I mean, PR is about trust, right? It's
mm,
about trust, it's about understanding, but it's also if you've got a story to tell. And I think the fantastic story, the bootstrap of what we actually did, competing with companies with 40 million. It's one of the things I always say is like anybody can spend 40 million on marketing, but can they make a business out of it?
mm. I was going to say so, but putting your own name out there also like makes you susceptible or like to being attacked or like being cancelled or something. So have you ever in these 12 years, 12, 15 years, has it ever occurred that your personal image was under uh, an attack or, any kind of sticky situation?
There has been times, but I think what I'm not afraid of a dialogue, right? So it's not a
Mm,
conflict. Been times when things haven't been right, but it's I think if you strive for, you can't be fair in everything, but if you strive for coming with a win-win solution, I think we set up the culture inside the company, which was you know a 360-degree happiness. So it was clients, it was franchisee, it was employees, and it was owners or stakeholders now. That had to be, so the things we built are built for that. So once in a while, yes, and we do have customer care and we do have complaints. It's natural in this industry. It's impossible to be perfect, but I think the way we solve it and are able to solve it is what sets us apart. Because it will happen. There will be someone who's half an hour late once in a while or an hour. Certain things can happen. A car can break down, and that means the cleaner isn't going to show up. It
mm,
happens. But being open and upfront about it, and that was one of the things about upfront pricing and about when are the arrival of the pro that we put in there. I think we created more of a service experience on top of it, and I think that helped a lot. So,
And you mentioned your business partner. How did you meet him? And what particular
well,
expertise of his do you value a lot?
oh, that's a hard question. No, it's actually quite easy. But I was saying, we met at a we met at a party, and it was just when I said like at the red wine spill time, and Anton had a company that was servicing Lehman Brothers at that stage, and was doing their cleaning of their boardrooms and everything else. And then we're talking about 2008 here. So anybody who knows the name Lehman Brothers, if
Yeah.
you're old enough to understand that, then it was a big crack. And
Mm-hmm.
Anton had 30 guys in there. That
Mm.
was on a 6 months pay. So Anton was in a bit of a pickle with it, and we met at the same time. It was pure like magic. And then I said, "Well, I
Some
need this
wine
done."
spilled.
And then Anton, yeah, some wine spilled, and I was like, and I said, like, let's look at that. And then we talked about, okay, well, Anton, I'll look at your website, and it was very simple. I looked at the website he had back then, and then I looked at the industry, and I was like, wow, that was when it really clicked to me. I said, like, I have to leave my well-paid job and say, like, I have to solve this problem in the industry, and I have to do it. And this was before you. This was around the same time as Uber started, and Airbnb
Mm.
was coming around this time. So we're talking about that time of, wow, you can do this connected, and then the model came up. Anton's incredible skill is that Anton is a true entrepreneur. Is very good at taking chances, very good at operational and really understanding people. So he's
Mm.
got an enormous amount of skills that complements my skills of more about systems and of marketing. So it's a very complementary skill set we have, which is one of my key cornerstones in bootstrapping, is that if you have the same skills, one of you is redundant. And it's not
Mm.
there for the taking. If both of you are super good at marketing, sorry, but you need someone who's super good at XYZ delivery or sales or operations or so on and so forth. You really need to complement each other, not be stepping on each other's toes. And we really did that well. So very good split between us in what we're doing.
Fair. And you mentioned that this is around the same time Uber starts to come into existence, and Uber is VC backed, and at some point it still keeps accumulating a loss because it's not a profit making company yet, right? Because the last I read, it was still a loss making company overall.
Well,
So,
well, Uber is in a big phase of what's called blitzscaling, right?
mm,
It's Uber is different from some other companies, right? Because Uber is actually generating revenue. If Uber let go of a lot of staff and didn't have to do all the lobbying and so forth, Uber would be profitable. This is where it's slightly different because they are doing the
mm,
transaction. Yes, there are things with the VAT that they're doing and certain things differently, but Uber has customers and Uber has drivers and Uber is
mm,
generating revenue. So that's different from where in the past it was like we were talking about, for example, Facebook before they switched on their advertising. They were really losing money because they were
mm,
building up this revenue. They couldn't afford the service and so forth. Uber is in a different state now. Can they it's a long story, but can they pull that off? But it's very different from the situation where we're in. We have to create
mm,
profit every month, every year, every so on and so forth. However, that's all up now because we know we can do it, and we've done the business case now, and now we've managed to scale it. So now funding is a different level. I'd say the best funding you can always get is debt funding. If you can get debt funding, you're not giving away equity, you're keeping your company. Now, do we want to share some of the company? Yes, of course, right? Because we need the right partners to take this across Europe, move across the pond. There's many other countries that need fantastic services. So yes, scale is needed, and that's where blitzscaling comes in.
mm,
Um, if you listen to Reid Hoffman on the blitzscaling podcast, it's very interesting to see the difference between like Airbnb as well. Like so
mhm,
much money is put into building that marketplace and making that marketplace to coming in. What we did differently in our case was we looked at the technology. How do we solve it? How do we get the model right? Once we've got the model right, then it can scale forever. Versus they go in and said like the model at one stage will get it right. Let's just grow. That's a whole different, it's a very exciting game to play, but it's not where Europeans, we're not so, let's say, I think we're more pragmatic on that one. It's a very big different mindset of really wanting going on blitz scale. It's like I'm gaining market share, I'll get the model right, I'll get it profitable or be bought out before I even have to do it. Um, I've seen it here in Europe, and it happens. I mean, there are a competitor of ours raised a decent amount of money
mm.
and got bought out. Now the
Oh.
people who bought it are sitting there kicking their heels because they spent way too much money on that company, and you know because they went down one route. But they will over a decade. You have a different time scale. And that's why I said, like, Uber is getting to, it's older than us now, right? So it's getting
For
there.
sure.
Uber is so they will have their space. I mean, there's a lot of legacy stuff that can be let go of Uber, and Uber is a profitable company. You know, but if they stop spending on self-driving cars and a number of other technology, there's a lot they can cut off now. So it's a different thing. You've got to look at, can it be profitable like this with a switch of a hand? I also think Uber had a lot of layoffs this year, and I think that no, they're not going to see profits, but we're going to see some changes in their cost base. That's for sure.
Oh, and interestingly, and now in Uber, there's a British law that says that you have to pay the minimum wage to every Uber driver, which is specific to Britain now. That is not there in the US, right?
Yeah, no, and Uber's under massive scrutiny, but I also know that the British government, I'm on a couple of coalitions on that as well, because we are looking at, like, how do we do e-commerce across Europe so that the Americans can't come out and just be the ones rolling this stuff here and saying held to the law, or the law of the lands that you're operating in, because it is harder to operate when you have to do it legally, right? I wouldn't say it's harder, but there's definitely more cost pressures on it, and there's a lot of taxes we paid that these guys didn't pay on some of their business and their business model and the way the business model worked. The UK and Europe, in particular, has got a lot of things to do on the e-commerce side, and I think post COVID, post the next couple of months, right now they're just in crisis mode. But in 2 years' time, when they wake up and realize that they're going to have to create growth, because the growth is just created by printing money, at that stage that stops. Then they're going to have to create growth by allowing certain businesses to run in a different way to really get things going. And that involves employment, that involves a lot of other things. So there's a lot of political things that's going to happen here.
How come there's like, because you brought up the example of these two. There's like, for hotels there's Airbnb, and for taxis there's Uber, but there is no global market chain, like globally spread and wide known for the services that you guys do. What do you think is
Well,
keeping that back?
Well, there is a very large one in the US. Angie is buying up these things. This is a 30-year-old company that started as a directory that's buying up companies like ours across the space. One of the things is that, first of all, I know my my friends in Angie will say that it's wrong, but the US is a lot easier. It's one country. It's got one
Fair.
currency. Europe has got different labor laws, which is one of the reasons that services isn't that big in Europe, because there's a number of labor laws. Also, it's one of those beautiful industries that everybody can sort of work in there and probably can make it to a six-figure business without having an MBA or without even having a degree, and you can start from the age of 17, which means that you're by the age of 20 something, you could, if you're using your money right, be driving a Bentley and a couple of nice things, and have bought the first 3 houses before the rest of us get out of university, right? So it is a different industry. Now, getting from 6 to 7 to 8 is where it gets hard. And that's what I looked at and said, like, how do I make it getting from 6 figures in a service industry to 7? How do I make that to 8 for a company? And that was by software and by automation. And then there was this way of doing franchising so we can really scale and we can use cross sales and a lot of other things. And that's part of what our aim is, really, because it is not that big. The reason why it's not global is because we all know that, and I'm hard to say that, but let's say it's harder for Americans to enter Europe, because there's a couple of understandings, and there's a couple of, I mean, Europe has some funny laws, and the UK has some funny laws about employment. UK has some funny laws about so on and so forth. There's some good startups in Germany and Sweden, but then some other countries are not really running on it. And I also think that it's only the beginning of it. And I think this is where we are going to see another unicorn here. We are going to see 1 or 2 of them. Right now in the US, one of the biggest franchising groups got bought by one of these technology companies. And we're talking about a £3 billion company here getting bought by a tech platform, which is very interesting to see. And we're the merge between those two. So it's going to be a very interesting space to go into, Shakson.
All right. So what's just the second last question is, What's one tip you would give to someone who's just starting out, like in the franchising industry or the domestic services market?
The number one
Yes.
thing Mark's written down in us, it's like forget about all the other things. You're doing PR, I've written the whole steps to success in the franchising now. It's coming out in the growth to success. But I said, like, if you kept all the customers, by delivering good service, your cost of marketing is so much smaller. And it's one of the things that we often forget when we are here as marketeers. So I'd say keep your customers.
Fair. And the last question is, what would you be doing right now if not fantastic services?
Another startup. I have 7 or 8 ideas in the library here that I'm waiting for being launched. We're using our software across a number of sectors. We've gone into fitness. We've gone into beauty as well. So our software is very, very strong on demand services, and we're selling it as a SaaS company. And there's a couple of things there where it's in my passion. Diving is one of them. So booking certain things into this, because we build a booking software that allows you to real-time availability and pricing, and it doesn't matter what service it is. So that's what's the engine behind Fantastic Services, and that's now seeing a lot of interest from different sectors that didn't know that they could cut up all of their operation costs. So I would still be doing a startup, even if I had retired and then let's say I cashed out and so forth. I couldn't stop that. Maybe I wouldn't work as many hours, but I'd say I'd always be either mentoring or being involved in this. It keeps you alive, and it's extremely fun.
Well, looking forward to interview you for like another company a couple of years down
Yeah,
the line.
or I stay here because Fantastic's got so much upsides on so many different directions, and we are profitable. And this year we made it through
For sure.
with this. So it's it spoke to me a year ago on this stuff here. I was worried, and I was down in a deep dark hole. And then I called Anton, and Anton called me. It was like instant when the lockdown was, and we said we had a friend to friend call, founder to founder call, and said, like, look, what if we just imagined that we lost it all and we're restarting now? We're back on zero, like where we were 10 years ago. How would we act now? And it's the same. We're just going to go through it, and we're just going to do, and we're just going to pivot, and we're just going to keep doing what we always did. So yes, we both had young children, and had to have that time off, but then we were ready again to go all full in and go blasting. So it was really refreshing as well to go back into it. And it's like, wow. And that's where I came up and got to learn about this Buddhist thing, which is Shoshin, which is about the beginner's mind. And it's incredible. It's like, I think Bezos said it in some way without maybe using the Buddhist stuff. It was like, it's always day one. And that's how we feel now. So we're in the same thing. It's Shoshin. We've always got somewhere we can improve. We're not going to rest on our laurels. We've got a lot of work to do here.
And then suddenly you discovered people want to do gardening at this time. So that pulled you guys out.
Well, exactly. No, but we kind of knew that because we had some sensors out. We could see what was going to do, and then changing the marketing a little bit and saying, like, well, enjoy the space and so forth. So the world is what it is. Things are going to happen, and that's in any industry. So the question is just, can you muster the energy to continue and keep at it?
For sure. That sounds like a good end to the episode. But thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Market of the Month. That was Rune Sovndahl, the co-founder and CEO of Fantastic Services, which is an online platform where clients can book professional domestic services providers such as plumbers, gardeners, and cleaners. Thanks for joining us, Rune.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to speak to you today, Shakram.
Do check out their website for more details, and we'll see you once again next month with another Market of the Month.